The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the typical arrogance that had defined the Alliance for over 3 millennia. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their designated sections, their bioluminescent displays and neural interfaces creating a light show that would have impressed any human observer. But no humans were present in this chamber, and that was exactly how the Council preferred it. Commander Zethkar of the Valethrian Empire stood at the central podium, his 6 arms gesticulating wildly as he addressed the assembly. His species had evolved from apex predators on a world where survival meant constant warfare, and it showed in every movement he made. The crystalline formations protruding from his skull caught the chamber's artificial light, creating rainbow patterns across his metallic skin. Esteemed colleagues, Zethkar's voice resonated through the chamber's universal translators. We gather today to discuss the most amusing development in recent galactic history. The species that calls itself humanity has somehow convinced itself that it deserves membership in our council. Ripples of what passed for laughter among the various species filled the chamber. The Kilthani delegation, resembling massive jellyfish floating in their environmental suits, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that indicated their amusement. The Mordeki representatives, silicon-based life forms that looked like living mountains, rumbled with their version of chuckling, causing minor tremors in the chamber floor. High Counselor Volterra of the Nexari Federation, whose species had mastered faster-than-light travel when humans were still figuring out agriculture, leaned forward in her hovering chair. Her elongated skull housed a brain 3 times larger than any human's, and her 4 eyes could process light spectrums that humans couldn't even imagine. Commander Zethkar speaks truth, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally overseen the expansion of galactic civilization. These humans have existed for what? A few 100,000 years? They've only achieved space flight in the last century of their existence. It's adorable, really. The chamber erupted in more sounds of amusement. The Thalgorim delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a mechanical shell, flickered with patterns that indicated contempt. I've reviewed their technological progression, the energy being spoke through its artificial voice box. They still use chemical propulsion for most of their space travel. Chemical propulsion. It's like watching children play with sticks and stones. Ambassador Korthal of the Hegemony of Worlds rose from his position. His species had evolved in the crushing gravity of a super-Earth, making them incredibly dense and strong. What humans would consider their strongest individuals would be children compared to the average Korthal citizen. Perhaps we should examine their recent achievements more closely, he said, activating a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The display showed various human settlements across their solar system. The lunar colonies with their transparent domes, the mining operations on Mars with their primitive atmosphere processors, the orbital stations around Jupiter's moons that looked like children's toys compared to galactic standard architecture. Observe their so-called terraforming efforts on Mars, Korthal continued. They're attempting to change the atmospheric composition using methods we abandoned 50,000 years ago. The process will take them thousands of years to complete if they don't kill themselves first. The display shifted to show human military vessels. Their largest warships looked primitive compared to the sleek, energy-based designs favored by galactic civilizations. Where Council ships were smooth, organic curves that seemed to flow through space, human vessels were angular, utilitarian, and covered in what appeared to be primitive weapon systems. Their military technology is particularly amusing, chimed in General Vextol of the Sarn Collective, whose species had perfected warfare to an art form across multiple dimensions. They still rely on kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. Their most advanced weapons are nuclear devices that would barely scratch the shields of our scout ships. The holographic display now showed recordings of human conflicts from their recent history. Wars fought with projectile weapons, aircraft that needed to generate lift using primitive aerodynamics, and ground vehicles that required wheels to function. The assembled aliens watched these displays with the kind of bemused interest one might show when observing insects. But surely, interjected Counselor Frylon of the Celestial Dominion, whose species existed partially in higher dimensions, their cultural and intellectual development might have some merit. The tone suggested this was asked more for entertainment than genuine inquiry. Zethkar activated another series of displays. These showed human art, literature, and philosophical works. Their cultural output is equally primitive, he announced. They still create physical paintings on canvas, write stories in linear formats, and their music uses only frequencies audible to their limited hearing range. They haven't even discovered how to create art that exists in multiple dimensional spaces simultaneously. The display shifted to show human religious and philosophical traditions. Perhaps most amusing of all, Zethkar continued, they still believe in supernatural entities and engage in ritualistic behaviors that served evolutionary purposes millions of years ago. They haven't achieved the mathematical certainty of existence that civilized species consider elementary. High Counselor Velterra nodded approvingly. And yet, these primitive beings have submitted a formal request for council membership. They believe they're ready to join a civilization that spans thousands of star systems and includes species that have transcended the basic limitations of physical existence. The chamber filled with more sounds of amusement. The very idea seemed absurd to beings who had spent millions of years developing technologies that could manipulate space-time, create matter from energy, and communicate instantaneously across galactic distances. What exactly do they offer as justification for membership? Asked Minister Kelton of the Umbral Consortium, whose species existed primarily as living shadows that could phase through solid matter at will. Zethkar consulted a data crystal that materialized in one of his hands. They claim to possess something they call human ingenuity and adaptability. They believe these qualities would be valuable additions to our alliance. He paused for effect. They also mentioned their capacity for what they term thinking outside the box. The chamber erupted in the loudest sounds of amusement yet. The concept of primitive beings offering to teach advanced civilizations anything was so absurd that several delegates had to pause their biological functions to process the humor. Thinking outside the box? Repeated General Vextol. We've transcended the very concept of boxes. We exist in multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously. What could beings who haven't even figured out how to manipulate quantum foam teach us about thinking? Counselor Frylon added, their neural processing is limited to a single brain contained within a fragile organic shell. They can't even directly interface with their technology without using primitive manual controls. The idea that they could contribute to our collective knowledge is beyond absurd. High Counselor Velterra stood to address the chamber directly. I propose we send them a response that reflects the appropriate level of consideration their request deserves. Something that makes clear their position in the cosmic hierarchy without being unnecessarily cruel. Agreed, rumbled Kor Thal. Though perhaps we should also send a small observation force to their system. It might be educational for our junior officers to observe a primitive civilization firsthand. Consider it a field study in evolutionary anthropology. The suggestion met with approval from across the chamber. The idea of using humanity as a teaching tool for their own students added an extra layer of humor to the situation. Zethkar gestured to his aide, who began preparing the official response. I'll draft a message explaining that while we appreciate their interest, membership in the Galactic Council requires a level of technological, cultural, and evolutionary development that they are unlikely to achieve for several 100,000 years, if ever. Make sure to include some encouragement, suggested Velterra with a tone that suggested anything, but tell them to keep developing, and perhaps in the distant future, when they've achieved faster-than-light travel, mastered energy manipulation, and transcended their biological limitations, they might be ready to serve as junior associates to actual civilized species. As the session continued, the aliens discussed humanity with the casual dismissiveness typically reserved for discussing the weather or other mundane topics. They spoke of human achievements the way adults might discuss a child's crayon drawing, acknowledging the effort while being utterly unimpressed by the result. The recording systems in the chamber captured every word, every dismissive gesture, every sound of alien laughter. These recordings will be transmitted across the galaxy, shared among the various species as entertainment. The idea of primitive humans requesting membership in the Galactic Council would become a popular joke told in social gatherings across dozens of worlds. None of the assembled aliens noticed the small distortion in the chamber's energy patterns a minor fluctuation that their sensors interpreted as a harmless equipment variation. They didn't detect the microscopic probe that had somehow penetrated their most secure facility, a device so small and advanced that it operated on principles they had never encountered. The probe continued its silent observation, recording not just the words but the emotional undertones, the technological displays, and the complete dismissal of humanity as anything more than an amusing curiosity. Every detail was captured and transmitted using communication methods that existed outside the normal electromagnetic spectrum, traveling faster than the Council's own instantaneous communication networks. As the session concluded, the aliens departed with the satisfaction of having dealt with an absurd request in an appropriate manner. They returned to their respective vessels and home worlds, carrying with them the amusing story of the primitive humans who thought they were ready to join civilized galactic society. None of them suspected that their reaction had been carefully observed, analyzed, and recorded by the very species they had just dismissed as irrelevant. None of them imagined that humanity's request for membership had never been intended to succeed. And none of them realized that they had just provided humanity with everything it needed to understand exactly what the galaxy thought of them. The probe's mission was complete. Its data would soon reach its destination, where beings the aliens had dismissed as primitive would analyze every word, every gesture, every display of technology. The galaxy had revealed its hand, shown its true nature, and demonstrated exactly how it viewed humanity. Soon, humanity would respond. But not in the way the Galactic Council expected. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in facilities that didn't exist on any public record, Admiral Sarachon reviewed the intelligence data for the 5th time that week. The underground complex stretched for kilometers in every direction, its corridors humming with activity that would have surprised anyone who believed humanity's space program was limited to the simple mining operations visible on the surface. The conference room where Admiral Chun sat was filled with representatives from every major government on Earth, along with several individuals whose organizations were so classified they didn't officially exist. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the complete recording from the Galactic Council chamber, captured by humanity's most advanced surveillance technology. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Chun began, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had spent decades preparing for this moment. "We now have complete confirmation of galactic civilization's attitude toward humanity. As expected, they view us as primitive, amusing, and completely irrelevant to their affairs." Dr. Marcus Webb, the project's chief xenobiologist, leaned forward in his chair. Despite his elderly appearance, his eyes burned with an intensity that came from 40 years of studying alien life forms in absolute secrecy. The technical specifications they revealed during their presentation are invaluable. "We now know the exact capabilities of their shield technology, their faster-than-light communication systems, and their dimensional manipulation abilities." General Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Initiative nodded approvingly. "More importantly, we know they're arrogant enough to completely underestimate any potential threat we might represent. They're so convinced of their superiority that they didn't bother to scan for surveillance during their most secure council meeting." The recording played again, showing the aliens laughing at humanity's primitive technology. What they couldn't know was that every piece of technology they had mocked was deliberately designed to appear primitive, while concealing capabilities that defied their understanding of physics. Professor Zhang Wei, the head of humanity's quantum research division, activated a series of holographic displays that showed the true extent of human technological development. While they were laughing at our chemical propulsion systems, they failed to detect that our ships utilize quantum field manipulation disguised as conventional rocket engines. Their sensors read exactly what we want them to read. The displays showed sleek vessels that bore no resemblance to the crude, angular ships the aliens had observed. These craft moved through space using principles that existed outside conventional physics, powered by energy sources that tapped directly into the quantum foam that underlay reality itself. Operation Looking Glass has been our most successful intelligence gathering program, reported Director Collins of the Strategic Reconnaissance Division. For the past 50 years, we've maintained observation posts throughout the galaxy using stealth technology that operates outside their sensory capabilities. We know the location of every major installation, every fleet movement, and every technological development in galactic civilization. Admiral Chen stood and walked to the primary display, which now showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with thousands of markers indicating human observation posts. The aliens believe they're observing a primitive civilization confined to one solar system. In reality, we've been studying them from within their own territories for decades. The scope of the deception was breathtaking. While aliens congratulated themselves on their advanced surveillance networks, human observers have been living undetected in their cities, working in their facilities, and accessing their most classified information. Humanity had developed technology that could make their agents appear to be any alien species, complete with matching biological signatures and neural patterns. Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's chief psychologist, reviewed the behavioral analysis data. Their reaction patterns are exactly what we predicted. Their technological superiority has made them intellectually complacent. They've been the dominant force in the galaxy for so long that they can't conceive of a genuine threat emerging from what they consider primitive species. The psychological profile painted a picture of civilizations that had grown stagnant through unchallenged dominance. They had become so accustomed to their technological advantages that they had stopped innovating, stopped questioning their assumptions, and stopped preparing for unexpected challenges. Their military doctrine is particularly revealing, added General Hassan, whose special forces have been training for decades using intelligence gathered from alien territories. They rely entirely on technological superiority and overwhelming force. They've never had to develop tactics for fighting an enemy that might possess unexpected capabilities. The alien military structures were impressive, but predictable. Their fleets operated using standard formations that maximized the effectiveness of their energy weapons and shield systems. Their tactics assumed that any enemy would engage using similar technology and similar strategic thinking. The possibility of facing an adversary that operated outside their technological and strategic frameworks had never been seriously considered. Professor Williams of the Temporal Research Institute shared the most classified information of all. While they were mocking our linear understanding of time, they failed to detect that we've successfully developed limited temporal manipulation capabilities. We've been observing their past strategic decisions and adjusting our long-term planning accordingly. The timeline manipulation technology was humanity's most closely guarded secret. It allowed limited observation of past events and careful adjustment of present actions to influence future outcomes. While the aliens possessed faster-than-light travel and communication, they had never developed the ability to manipulate temporal flow itself. Admiral Chen activated the final set of displays, showing the true scope of humanity's military capabilities. Operation Eclipse is ready for implementation. Every major alien military installation, communication hub, and command center has been mapped and tagged. Our strike teams have been in position for months, waiting for authorization to proceed. The strike teams consisted of humans who had undergone genetic and cybernetic modifications that allowed them to survive in any environment the galaxy could offer. They carried weapons that existed outside conventional physics, powered by technology that the aliens had never encountered and wouldn't be able to counter. The beauty of our position, explained Dr. Webb, is that they've told us exactly how they view us. They see us as amusing primitives who might eventually be worthy of serving as junior associates to civilized species. This gives us the perfect cover for the next phase of our plan. Phase 2 would involve humanity making contact with the galaxy as apparent newcomers, offering to serve as the primitive species they believed us to be. Human agents would integrate into alien society at the lowest levels, gaining access to facilities and information while maintaining the pretense of being exactly what the aliens expected. Meanwhile, continued Admiral Chun, our real forces will continue operating from the shadows. While they're congratulating themselves on civilizing primitive humans, we'll be systematically identifying and neutralizing every strategic advantage they possess. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Humanity would give the aliens exactly what they expected to see, reinforcing their beliefs about human primitiveness while secretly undermining every foundation of their civilization. By the time they realized what was happening, it would be too late to mount any effective resistance. Director Martinez of the Deep Cover Operations Division presented the infiltration status. We currently have operatives in positions of authority within every major alien government. They believe these individuals are members of their own species who have risen through merit and political skill. In reality, they're humans using our most advanced identity disguise technology. Some of humanity's best agents have been living as aliens for decades, slowly working their way into positions of power and influence. They had families, careers, and social connections that were completely genuine from the aliens' perspective, while secretly serving humanity's long-term strategic objectives. The meeting concluded with the authorization of Phase 3, the systematic collection of every piece of alien technology that could be useful to humanity's goals. While the aliens believed humans were struggling to achieve basic spaceflight, human science teams would be reverse engineering their most advanced systems and improving upon them. Remember, Admiral Chan said as the session ended, every alien we've observed believes they're dealing with primitive humans who pose no conceivable threat to their civilization. This assumption is our greatest weapon. As long as they continue to underestimate us, we maintain every advantage. The participants dispersed to their various assignments, carrying with them the satisfaction of knowing that humanity's true capabilities remained completely hidden from galactic civilization. The aliens had unknowingly provided the intelligence necessary for their own defeat, all while congratulating themselves on their superiority. Far above the lunar surface, automated systems continued broadcasting the signals that maintained the illusion of primitive human technology. Radio communications, chemical exhaust signatures, and energy patterns all perfectly mimicked what a developing civilization would produce, creating a false picture that reinforced every alien assumption about humanity's limitations. The deception was so complete that even if aliens decided to investigate human civilization more thoroughly, they would find exactly the evidence they expected to find. Every observation would confirm their beliefs about human primitiveness, making it impossible for them to discover the truth until it was far too late. As the Earth turned beneath the artificial lunar sky, humanity continued its patient preparation for the day when the galaxy would learn the true meaning of underestimating the species they had dismissed as irrelevant. The aliens had revealed their hand, shown their weaknesses, and provided the intelligence necessary for their own downfall. Soon, the galaxy would discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't advanced technology or superior firepower. It was the ability to be consistently underestimated by beings who considered themselves too intelligent to be deceived. The merchant vessel Earthbound Hope drifted toward the Zephyrian trade station with all the grace of a wounded whale. Its hull was scarred and patched, clearly showing the signs of species still learning to navigate the dangers of space. The ship's chemical engines sputtered occasionally, leaving trails of inefficient exhaust that any civilized species would have eliminated thousands of years ago. Captain Maria Santos, whose real identity was buried so deep in classified files that even she sometimes forgot her original name, maintained the perfect expression of nervous determination that characterized humans making their first tentative contact with galactic civilization. Her crew of 12 moved about their duties with the slightly clumsy efficiency of beings still adapting to three-dimensional space travel. Incoming transmission from the station, reported her communications officer, whose accent carried the regional variations that humans had carefully preserved to maintain the illusion of a planet-bound species just beginning to explore space. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Commander Vextal of the Zephyrian Trade Authority. His species resembled what humans might have called a cross between a mantis and a dolphin, if either creature had evolved intelligence and mastery over interstellar commerce. His compound eyes studied the human vessel with the kind of amused curiosity typically reserved for observing children's toys. "Greetings, primitive vessel." Vextal spoke through the universal translator, his tone carrying the condescending patience of a being addressing intellectual inferiors. "I am Commander Vextal. You appear to be from the species that recently submitted a membership request to the Galactic Council. I trust you received our response." Captain Santos activated her own translator, deliberately introducing the slight delays and awkward phrasing that would be expected from species just learning to use galactic technology. "Yes, Honor Commander. We understand that humanity is not yet ready for full membership. We come seeking trade opportunities and hoping to learn from your advanced civilization." The response was exactly what the aliens expected to hear. Humble, deferent, and acknowledging the vast superiority of galactic civilization. Vextal's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his species. "How refreshingly honest," he replied. "Most primitive species begin with grandiose claims about their potential contributions to galactic society. Your willingness to acknowledge your limitations suggests you might eventually prove educable." The Earthbound Hope was granted docking permission at the station's outer ring, in a section typically reserved for vessels that might pose contamination risks or whose technology was considered potentially dangerous due to its primitiveness. As the ship maneuvered into position, its sensors recorded every detail of the station's structure, energy patterns, and defensive systems. What the aliens interpreted as clumsy maneuvering was actually precision data collection. Every apparent mistake, every course correction, every moment of apparent confusion provided an excuse to scan different sections of the station with instruments the aliens couldn't detect because they operated outside their understanding of physics. The docking bay bustled with activity as various alien species conducted their trade negotiations. The Kilthani floated in their environmental suits, their bioluminescent patterns creating complex communications that resembled living art. The Thalgorum energy beings flickered between their mechanical shells, conducting multiple conversations simultaneously across different dimensional frequencies. Captain Santos led her away team into the station with the wide-eyed wonder expected from a primitive species experiencing advanced galactic technology for the first time. Her science officer carried primitive-looking scanning devices that appeared to be crude attempts to understand alien technology while secretly recording quantum-level structural information that would allow humanity to replicate anything they observed. "Welcome to Commerce Station Zephyria 7. Announced the station's AI through speakers that seemed to materialize sound from the air itself. "Please proceed to Processing Bay 12 for biological and technological verification. All primitive species must be cleared for potential contamination risks before accessing general station areas." The processing bay resembled a medical facility crossed with a decontamination chamber. Alien technicians, their movements precise and efficient, conducted scans that were designed to catalog the biological and technological characteristics of new species. What they found was exactly what they expected: carbon-based life forms with limited technological augmentation and primitive understanding of galactic science. They missed the quantum-level modifications that allowed humans to survive in any environment, the neural enhancements that permitted direct interface with technology beyond their comprehension, and the genetic improvements that made every human stronger, faster, and more resilient than any baseline organic being in the galaxy. "Fascinating," commented Dr. Zelnari, the station's chief xenobiologist, whose tentacles waved hypnotically as she studied the scan results. "They're completely organic. No technological integration, no genetic optimization, no neural enhancement whatsoever. It's like observing our own ancestors from millions of years ago." The humans submitted to the scanning procedures with appropriate nervousness and curiosity, asking questions that demonstrated their primitive understanding while secretly recording every detail of the technology being used on them. Each scan provided information about alien medical and scientific capabilities while reinforcing their impression of human limitations. After completing the processing procedures, Captain Santos and her team were assigned a Zephyrian liaison named Subcommander Kethmar, whose role was to ensure that primitive species didn't accidentally damage themselves or station equipment through ignorance. His attitude was professionally condescending, like a teacher assigned to supervise particularly slow students. "Your species shows promise," Kethmar explained as he led them through the station's commercial districts. "With proper guidance and perhaps a few centuries of development, you might eventually qualify for associate membership in some of the lesser trade organizations." The tour provided an excellent opportunity to observe alien society in its natural environment. The humans watched with apparent amazement as various species conducted business using technology that seemed magical to primitive eyes. Currency transfers occurred through quantum manipulation, contracts were sealed using dimensional encoding, and complex negotiations took place simultaneously across multiple time streams. What the aliens saw as primitive humans struggling to understand advanced concepts was actually a comprehensive intelligence gathering operation. Every conversation, every transaction, every casual interaction provided data about galactic economic systems, political relationships, and technological capabilities. In the recreational districts, the humans observed alien entertainment and social customs. They watched beings play games that existed in four-dimensional space, witnessed artistic performances that manipulated reality itself, and experienced cuisine that altered the consciousness of those who consumed it. Your species seems particularly interested in our entertainment. Observe Kethmar as Captain Santos asked questions about a concert where the performers existed as living music. This is typical of primitive cultures. You focus on the surface spectacle without understanding the underlying scientific principles. Captain Santos nodded with appropriate humility. We have much to learn. On Earth, our entertainment is very simple. We have musicians who create sound using physical instruments, and artists who apply colored substances to flat surfaces. The description caused several nearby aliens to pause their activities and listen with amusement. The idea of entertainment limited to two-dimensional surfaces and simple acoustic vibrations seemed quaintly primitive to beings whose art existed across multiple dimensions of space and time. How charmingly nostalgic, commented a Nexari trader whose elongated skull housed a brain capable of processing 17 different sensory inputs simultaneously. It reminds me of exhibits I've seen in our museums of galactic prehistory. During their week-long stay at the station, the humans gradually built relationships with various alien traders and officials. They presented themselves as eager to learn and grateful for any guidance, while carefully gathering intelligence about galactic trade routes, military movements, and political tensions. The aliens found human curiosity endearing, and their willingness to acknowledge alien superiority refreshing. Unlike some primitive species that had to be conquered and civilized by force, humans seem naturally inclined toward proper deference to their betters. Your species might actually have potential, Subcommander Kethmar confided during their final meeting. Most primitives either grovel excessively or display inappropriate arrogance. Humans seem to understand your proper place in the cosmic hierarchy while maintaining enough curiosity to eventually achieve limited civilization. The Earthbound Hope departed the station with apparent reluctance, its crew expressing gratitude for the opportunity to observe advanced galactic civilization. Their cargo hold contained various alien devices and materials that they had been permitted to purchase using primitive Earth metals that the aliens found aesthetically interesting. What the aliens didn't know was that every device, every material sample, and every data crystal they had sold to humanity would be completely reverse-engineered within hours of returning to human space. The seemingly primitive questions the humans had asked during their visit had provided the context necessary to understand and improve upon alien technology. As the human vessel disappeared into hyperspace using what appeared to be a barely functional faster-than-light drive, the aliens at the station returned to their normal activities with the satisfaction of having properly civilized another primitive species. They had provided appropriate guidance to beings who clearly understood their limitations and showed proper respect for galactic superiority. The encounter would be reported as a successful first contact with a primitive but potentially teachable species. The humans had been properly categorized as harmless, grateful, and unlikely to cause any problems as they slowly developed toward the possibility of eventual junior membership in galactic society. None of the aliens suspected that they had just provided humanity with a complete intelligence briefing on galactic commerce, technology, and social structure. None of them realized that the primitive humans they had patronized were capable of comprehending and surpassing every piece of technology they had observed. As the Earthbound Hope transmitted its report back to Human Command, the intelligence gathered during 1 week at a single trade station provided enough information to revolutionize human technology and strategy. The aliens had welcomed humanity into their civilization as amusing primitives, never suspecting that they had just given their most dangerous enemy complete access to everything they needed to ensure galactic domination. The deception was proceeding exactly according to plan. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, reviewing what should have been routine patrol reports from the Outer Rim sectors. His Veilthrian crew moved with practiced efficiency around him, their six-armed forms perfectly adapted to operating the crystalline control interfaces that characterize their advanced technology. The reports themselves were unremarkable. Patrol vessels checking automated monitoring stations, trade route security updates, and routine communications with various colony worlds. Everything appeared normal, which was exactly what made the Admiral increasingly uncomfortable. Communications Officer Velthak, he called to his chief signals specialist, show me the pattern analysis for the past 30 rotations. The main display filled with a three-dimensional representation of communication traffic across their patrol sector. Normal patterns showed the regular pulse of commerce, administrative transmissions, and civilian communications that characterized a properly functioning region of galactic space. What the display showed instead was a series of subtle gaps and inconsistencies that only became apparent when viewed as a whole. "Sir," reported Velthak, her four eyes studying the data with growing concern, "we're seeing communication delays that don't match any known phenomena. Messages are arriving at their destinations, but the transmission times are inconsistent with our understanding of quantum communication theory." Zethkar moved to the tactical station where his weapons specialist, Commander Korthval, was reviewing defensive system reports. "Any unusual energy readings from our monitoring networks?" "That's the peculiar aspect, Admiral," Korthval replied, his natural paranoia as a former warrior making him particularly sensitive to potential threats. "Our sensors are functioning perfectly, all energy signatures are within normal parameters, and every automated system reports optimal performance. But something feels wrong," Zethkar finished. It was an instinct that had kept him alive through multiple campaigns and made him one of the most respected commanders in the Veilthrian fleet. When veterans of interstellar warfare felt uneasy, wise leaders paid attention. The Admiral activated his private communication channel to Fleet Command. "Central Command, this is Admiral Zethkar requesting priority conference with Intelligence Division. I need to discuss unusual patterns in the Outer Rim sectors." The response came within minutes, faster than normal bureaucratic channels should have allowed. Admiral Frysin of Fleet Intelligence appeared on the secure, holographic display, her expression showing the kind of concern that came from having access to information others didn't. "Admiral Zethkar," she began without preliminary pleasantries, "your request is timely. We've been receiving similar reports from commanders across multiple sectors. Pattern analysis suggests we may be dealing with unprecedented phenomena." The conference expanded to include representatives from various intelligence and military divisions across the galaxy. What emerged from their collective reports painted a picture that challenged everything they understood about their surveillance and defense networks. 17 separate commanders have reported similar inconsistencies, Admiral Frysin continued. Communication delays, sensor readings that don't quite match expected parameters, and a general sense that something is operating outside our normal monitoring capabilities. General Vextol of the Sarn Collective joined the conference from his command vessel. "My dimensional warfare specialists have detected anomalies that suggest someone is manipulating space-time in ways we haven't encountered before. The effects are subtle, but they indicate technology beyond our current understanding." The implications were staggering. Galactic civilization had been the dominant force in their region of space for millions of years. Their technology was based on principles that had been refined and perfected across countless generations. The possibility that some unknown force possessed capabilities beyond their own challenged the fundamental assumptions of their supremacy. "Could this be related to some natural phenomenon we haven't encountered?" asked Commander Kelthani from the Deep Space Research Division. "Perhaps some previously unknown property of space-time that we're only now detecting?" Admiral Frysin activated a series of displays showing data collected from across the galaxy. "The patterns are too organized, too purposeful to be natural phenomena. Someone or something is actively interfering with our communications and sensor networks using methods we can't detect or counter." The data showed a subtle but comprehensive degradation of galactic surveillance capabilities. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger automatic alerts, but significant enough to create blind spots in their monitoring networks. Whoever was responsible understood their systems well enough to exploit weaknesses they hadn't known existed. What about those primitive humans who've been requesting trade relationships? Suggested Admiral Zethkar. Could they be somehow involved in these anomalies? The suggestion was met with sounds of amusement from several participants. The idea that the primitive species they had recently encountered could pose any kind of technological challenge to galactic civilization seemed absurd. Admiral, replied General Vextol with barely concealed condescension. Humans are using chemical propulsion and primitive electronic communications. They couldn't interfere with our systems if we gave them detailed instruction manuals. Their most advanced technology is millennia behind our most basic capabilities. Admiral Frysen accessed the human contact reports. According to our intelligence assessments, humans are exactly what they appear to be, a recently spacefaring species with primitive technology and appropriate respect for galactic authority. They've been model primitives in all their interactions with our traders and officials. The conference participants reviewed the reports from various human contacts across the galaxy. Every encounter supported the assessment of humanity as harmless, grateful, and properly deferent to their technological superiors. The humans asked appropriate questions, showed suitable amazement at galactic technology, and conducted themselves with the humility expected from primitive species. Nevertheless, Admiral Zethkar continued, the timing is suspicious. These anomalies began appearing shortly after humans started making contact with various galactic facilities. Coincidences make me uncomfortable. Then, we investigate, decided Admiral Frysan. I'll order comprehensive surveillance of human activities in galactic space. If they're somehow involved in these anomalies, we'll discover it quickly. If they're innocent, the investigation will confirm their harmless nature. The investigation began immediately, utilizing the most advanced surveillance technology galactic civilization possessed. Intelligence operatives were assigned to monitor every human vessel, every trade negotiation, and every interaction with galactic citizens. The goal was to determine whether humanity posed any conceivable threat to galactic security. The results were exactly what the investigators expected to find. Human vessels operated using primitive technology that left obvious energy signatures. Human communications used simple encryption that could be decoded by any civilized intelligence service. Human behavior patterns matched the psychological profiles of a species just beginning to understand their place in a larger universe. The humans are completely transparent, reported Agent Kelvari from the Covert Operations Division. Their technology, their intentions, and their capabilities are exactly what they appear to be. If they're somehow responsible for these anomalies, they're using methods that exist outside the laws of physics as we understand them. The investigation continued for weeks, growing more comprehensive as the anomalies became more pronounced. Galactic communication networks experienced increasing delays and irregularities. Sensor arrays reported equipment malfunctions that disappeared upon inspection. Military vessels found their navigation systems occasionally providing readings that didn't match their expected positions. Meanwhile, human vessels continued their primitive trade missions throughout galactic space. Their crews maintained the same eager curiosity and appropriate deference they had shown from the beginning. They purchased alien technology with obvious excitement, asked endless questions about galactic culture and history, and expressed consistent gratitude for being permitted to participate in civilized commerce. If humans are responsible for these problems, Admiral Zethkar told his staff during one of their regular briefings, then they're using technology so advanced that it appears primitive to our sensors. That level of sophistication would require a completely different understanding of physics than anything we've encountered. The idea seemed impossible, but the evidence was becoming harder to ignore. The anomalies were spreading, becoming more frequent and more disruptive. Some patrol vessels reported brief moments where their sensors showed completely empty space in areas where monitoring stations should have been visible. Other ships experienced navigation errors that placed them in positions they hadn't intended to occupy. Perhaps, suggested his tactical officer, we should consider the possibility that humans aren't responsible, but they're somehow connected to whatever is causing these anomalies. Maybe they're unwitting carriers of some technology they don't understand. The theory gained support among intelligence analysts who couldn't reconcile humanity's obvious primitiveness with the sophisticated nature of the anomalies. Perhaps humans had encountered some ancient technology they couldn't comprehend, but had somehow activated. Maybe they were being used by some other force without their knowledge. Order increased surveillance of all human activities, Admiral Frysen commanded. If they're connected to these anomalies, we need to understand the nature of that connection. And if they're not responsible, we need to eliminate them as suspects so we can focus on finding the real cause. The surveillance operation became the most comprehensive intelligence-gathering effort in galactic history. Every human vessel was tracked continuously. Every communication was monitored and analyzed. Every interaction with galactic citizens was recorded and studied for any indication of hidden capabilities or secret agendas. The humans seemed genuinely unaware that they were under observation. They continued their trade activities with the same innocent enthusiasm they had shown from the beginning. Their private conversations, monitored through the most advanced eavesdropping technology available, revealed exactly what would be expected from a primitive species trying to understand advanced galactic society. As the investigation continued, the anomalies grew worse. Entire monitoring stations went offline for brief periods before resuming normal operation. Military communications experienced delays that shouldn't have been possible with quantum instantaneous transmission systems. Some patrol vessels reported sensor ghosts that appeared to be massive fleets before disappearing without explanation. The galaxy's greatest military and intelligence minds were being systematically outmaneuvered by an enemy they couldn't identify, using methods they couldn't understand, while the only new variable in their environment appeared to be a species too primitive to pose any conceivable threat. Admiral Zeth Carr stood on his bridge, staring at reports that described a deteriorating situation with no apparent cause and no obvious solution. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone or something was dismantling their surveillance and communication networks with surgical precision, and they had no idea who was responsible or how to stop it. The investigation would continue, but doubt was beginning to creep into the minds of galactic civilization's leadership. For the first time in millions of years, they faced a challenge they couldn't comprehend, created by an enemy they couldn't identify. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with an urgency not seen in over 1,000 years. Representatives from every major civilization filled the Great Chamber, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of concern that overwhelmed the universal translators. For the first time in recorded galactic history, their absolute technological superiority was being challenged by an unknown enemy. High Counselor Volterra stood at the central podium, her four eyes reflecting the strain of coordinating a response to threats they couldn't understand. Around her, the assembled representatives displayed every possible variation of alien anxiety. Bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically, energy beings pulsed with unstable frequencies, and even the typically composed silicon-based life forms showed signs of structural instability. Esteemed colleagues, Volterra began, her voice carrying through the chamber with forced calm. We face an unprecedented situation. Our communication networks are failing, our monitoring stations are experiencing systematic malfunctions, and our patrol fleets are reporting encounters with phenomena that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics. The massive display screens around the chamber showed the scope of the crisis. Communication delays had spread throughout the galaxy, creating blind spots in their surveillance networks that grew larger with each passing day. Military vessels reported sensor readings that defied analysis, and some patrol ships had simply stopped responding to communications entirely. Admiral Frysen of Fleet Intelligence activated a holographic display that showed the timeline of anomalies. The pattern is clear, but incomprehensible. Whatever force is responsible for these disruptions possesses technology that operates outside our scientific understanding. They can manipulate our systems without triggering our security protocols and affect our equipment without leaving detectable traces. General Vextol of the Sarn Collective, whose species had perfected warfare across multiple dimensions, rose to address the assembly. My tactical analysis indicates we're facing an enemy that understands our technology better than we do ourselves. They're not randomly attacking our systems. They're surgically dismantling our defensive capabilities with precision that suggests complete knowledge of our infrastructure. The implications sent waves of unease through the chamber. Galactic civilization had been built on the foundation of technological supremacy that had remained unchallenged for millions of years. The possibility that some unknown force possessed superior capabilities challenged everything they believed about their place in the universe. "What about the primitive humans?" asked Commander Korthval from the Valethrian delegation. "Our investigation has found no evidence of their involvement, but the timing of these anomalies coincides with their appearance in galactic space." Admiral Frysen consulted her data displays. Comprehensive surveillance of human activities has revealed nothing suspicious. Their technology remains primitive, their communications are easily monitored, and their behavior is consistent with a species grateful for the opportunity to learn from advanced civilizations. If they're connected to these anomalies, the connection exists beyond our ability to detect. The chamber erupted in discussions as representatives debated possibilities that ranged from ancient alien artifacts to dimensional incursions from parallel universes. None of their theories could explain how an unknown force was systematically dismantling their technological infrastructure without revealing itself. Suddenly, every display screen in the chamber flickered and went dark. The universal translators fell silent. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the representatives of galactic civilization sat in darkness, surrounded by the failure of technology they had believed to be infallible. When the systems restored themselves, a new image appeared on the screens. A simple, two-dimensional projection showed a human female sitting at what appeared to be a primitive control console. The image quality was deliberately degraded, giving it the appearance of early electronic transmission technology. "Greetings, representatives of galactic civilization," the human said, her voice transmitted through audio systems that had been secured beyond any possibility of outside interference. "I'm Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Strategic Defense Initiative. I believe we need to have conversation." The chamber fell into absolute silence. The primitive human they had dismissed as irrelevant was somehow communicating directly through their most secure systems, in their most protected facility, during their most classified emergency session. "You have been wondering about the recent anomalies in your communication and surveillance networks," Admiral Chin continued, her tone carrying the calm authority of someone delivering information rather than making threats. "I'm here to explain what's been happening and discuss the future relationship between humanity and galactic civilization." High Counselor Velterra found her voice first. "How are you accessing our secured communications? Our systems are protected by quantum encryption that no primitive species could possibly breach." Admiral Chin's expression showed what might have been amusement. "Counselor Velterra, your species achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 47,000 years ago. Your current position was achieved through a political alliance formed 18 years ago with the Mordecki delegation. You have 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and a private collection of pre-spaceflight artifacts that you believe no one else knows about. The personal details, which should have been impossible for any outsider to know, sent shock waves through the chamber. If humans could access such private information, what other secrets have been compromised? Allow me to clarify the situation," Admiral Chun continued. "For the past 50 years, humanity has maintained comprehensive surveillance of galactic civilization. We have operatives embedded within every major government, scientific institution, and military organization. We have technology that allows us to monitor your communications, access your databases, and observe your activities without detection." The holographic display shifted to show images that made the assembled aliens question everything they believed they knew. Human agents, disguised as members of various alien species, were shown in positions of authority throughout galactic civilization. Some held ranks in military organizations, others worked in research facilities, and several occupied elected positions in alien governments. "The humans we permitted into our territories," Admiral Chun explained, "were exactly what they appeared to be, representatives of our species making contact with galactic civilization. What you didn't detect was that they were also intelligence operatives conducting the most comprehensive reconnaissance operation in galactic history." General Vextol activated his communication systems, intending to alert military units throughout the galaxy. Instead, He found his equipment displaying messages from his own commanders reporting the disappearance of entire fleets. Patrol vessels that had been operating normally just hours earlier were simply gone, with no distress signals, no debris, and no trace of what happened to them. Your military response capabilities have been neutralized, Admiral Chun informed them, apparently monitoring their communication attempts in real time. Every major fleet, strategic installation, and command center in the galaxy is currently surrounded by forces you cannot detect using methods you cannot counter. The display showed tactical readouts from across the galaxy. Massive human fleets, previously invisible to alien sensors, had materialized around every significant military target. The ships were unlike anything in galactic civilization's databases, utilizing technology that seemed to exist outside conventional physics. "This is impossible," declared Admiral Frysen. "Our sensors would have detected any fleet movement of this magnitude. You couldn't hide entire armadas using primitive technology." "You're correct," Admiral Chen agreed. "We couldn't accomplish this using primitive technology. But then, our technology isn't primitive. It never was." The revelation hit the chamber like a physical blow. Everything they had observed about human technology, every assessment they had made about human capabilities, had been deliberately crafted to reinforce their assumptions about human primitiveness. "Your chemical propulsion systems," Admiral Chen continued, "are quantum field manipulation disguised as primitive rocket engines. Your simple radio communications are quantum entanglement networks that operate outside your detection capabilities. Your crude metal hulls contain materials that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." The technical explanations described capabilities that exceeded anything in galactic civilization's scientific databases. Humanity hadn't just been hiding advanced technology. They had developed innovations that surpassed galactic understanding by orders of magnitude. "But why?" asked High Counselor Volterra, her voice barely audible through her shock. "Why maintain this deception? What do you want from us?" Admiral Chen's expression became serious, losing any trace of amusement. "Counselor, when humanity requested membership in your civilization, we weren't seeking permission to join your society. We were conducting reconnaissance to determine whether galactic civilization posed a threat to human interests." The chamber erupted as representatives realized they had been under evaluation by the species they had dismissed as primitive. The psychological reversal was devastating. They were not the advanced civilization graciously considering membership for worthy primitives. They were the subjects being assessed for their value to humanity's plans. "Your response to our membership request was illuminating," Admiral Chen continued. "You revealed your true attitudes toward species you consider inferior. You've demonstrated that galactic civilization is based on the assumption of permanent technological and cultural superiority over lesser beings." The recordings of the original council session played on the chamber's displays, showing the aliens laughing at humanity's request and discussing humans as amusing primitives who might eventually serve as junior associates to civilized species. "We concluded that galactic civilization represents a long-term threat to humanity's development and independence," Admiral Chen explained. "Your society is structured around the assumption that less advanced species will remain permanently subordinate to their technological superiors. This assumption is incompatible with human values and human ambitions." The display shifted to show the scope of human infiltration throughout galactic society. The revelation was comprehensive and devastating. Humans have been living among aliens for decades, learning their weaknesses, mapping their infrastructure, and positioning themselves for this moment. Therefore, Admiral Chun announced, humanity has decided to implement a new galactic order. Your civilizations will be restructured under human oversight. Your military capabilities will be eliminated. Your governments will be reorganized according to principles that prioritize genuine cooperation over technological hierarchy. The transformation had already begun. Across the galaxy, human forces were taking control of strategic installations without resistance. Alien fleets found their weapons and shields non-functional against technology they couldn't understand. Government facilities discovered that their most secure systems were under human control and had been for years. "This is not a conquest in the traditional sense," Admiral Chen clarified. "Your civilizations will continue to exist, your cultures will be preserved, and Your people will retain their autonomy in most aspects of their lives. But the era of galactic civilization's unchallenged dominance is over. As the session ended, the representatives of galactic civilization sat in stunned silence, processing the complete reversal of everything they had believed about their place in the universe. The primitive humans they had ridiculed had outmaneuvered them completely, using their own arrogance and assumptions against them. Admiral Chen's final words echoed through the chamber as the transmission ended. You dismissed humanity as irrelevant primitives. You failed to consider that our greatest advantage was being underestimated by beings who considered themselves too intelligent to be deceived. Today, you learn the true cost of that assumption. The galaxy had indeed learned what happened when they ridiculed humanity. Their fleets hadn't just vanished into oblivion. They'd been systematically neutralized by the species they had dismissed as harmless primitives. The age of galactic civilization was over. The age of humanity had begun.